So the reason I'm taking ashwagandha is mostly for performance purposes, because I've heard claims that it can increase performance in fitness and exercise. And I like to work out. I do a lot of Muay Thai. I like to lift a lot of weights. And also, I've heard that it's really good at increasing sociability. And I'm not exactly anxious when it comes to social encounters. I'm pretty social, but I don't look forward to them. And I think that's something pretty cool that Ashwagandha is capable of. And I know a lot of people have the same issue and concern. So if those claims hold up, that'll be pretty awesome. I meant to mention that I'm also interested in the research showing ashwagandha to be an effective cognitive enhancer. And I want to find out personally how well it does that. Researchers in Japan discovered that it's capable of causing neurogenesis, which is basically causing brain cells to grow and making them more easily capable of communicating with one another, which increases cognition. So, to set a baseline of where I'm at now, I tested myself with a dual end back task, which is basically used to assess working memory. And before taking ashwagandha, I scored 81%, which is alright, but nothing too impressive. And after taking ashwagandha at 200 milligrams, I waited about 15 minutes for it to kick in. And then I did the dual end back test again and scored 70%. And so, to make sure my results were accurate and I wasn't distracted by anything, I did it again. I actually scored less this time at 57%. So it definitely had an effect on me. I felt really out of it and a little loopy. Ashwagandha has a tendency to have that effect, so it wasn't exactly the best thing for working memory. At the end of this, I'll be testing myself again with another dual end back test, but not after having dosed ashwagandha, just after waking a little bit. So that way I have an idea of whether or not it actually improved my cognition, or whether that's mostly for people with brain damage and diseases that the study showed. Alright, so day one of taking ashwagandha, I decided to take 400 milligrams before I went to go work out, which on this day was boxing. And I did that about an hour before. Like before it kicked in, about 15 minutes afterwards, and I didn't necessarily feel too tranquilized, which was good because you don't want to be too relaxed when you're boxing, but I felt a little out of it in somewhat of a detached state, but it wasn't too bad. And so I went to work out, had a great workout. I noticed that I was very relaxed, very loose, and I was reacting naturally, which is ideal when you're boxing versus forcing anything. I was in a great mood. I was really almost annoyingly in a good mood, and I was very sociable, which is different when I'm working out, or boxing especially, because I tend to keep to myself at that time, that time in particular. And I didn't feel any kind of slowdown or none of that I expected, which was awesome. So that's day one. So day two, I split my 400 milligram doses over the day in two 200 milligram doses, and I noticed the same things as day one, the same effects, the same calming effect within like 15 minutes. But other than that, there was really nothing noticeable this day. So day three was a bit more eventful than day two. I took my 200 milligram dose in the morning, and it kicked in almost immediately. I had an improved mood, and I felt more clear-headed, and my priorities seemed more obvious. And I'm pretty sure that was because I was less stressed, so I was, functioning a little more mentally well than I had been, and I was thinking more clearly. For my second dose, I decided to go with 400 milligrams because the 200 milligrams wasn't affecting me quite as much as I had hoped. And seeing as how I'm bigger than most people, I'm 250 pounds, I figured maybe I should be taking a bigger dose because of my weight. So the 400 milligram dose actually made me feel a bit out of it, and I still felt a bit anxious mentally in certain situations, which was strange because normally I wouldn't even feel anxious in those situations. But what was really interesting was even with the bit of anxiety that I was feeling, I felt more motivated to deal with those situations than I normally would prior to taking ashwagandha. So there was like an increase of anxiety, but there was also an increase of drive to deal with that specific anxiety. And anybody that's dealt with anxiety knows that there's usually more of a desire to escape rather than face the situation, and it compounds upon itself. So I think it's pretty cool that I had more of a motivation to deal with the situation rather than get out of there. Something I forgot to mention about day 3 was this, I had a really intense feeling of detachment from everything. It's almost that feeling when you're dreaming, except you're wide awake and you're not quite sure if you're dreaming or awake. Really uncomfortable feeling. But day 4, that feeling went away quite a bit, and I was feeling much more sociable than even prior to that. I actually almost went up to some random guy at the gym and started talking to him, which is something that's just, you don't do. Part of me wonders if the dreamlike feelings are a result of some kind of chemical change or something, because the day before I felt completely different from day 4, and that dreaminess was gone, so who knows. But this day I felt very sociable, and I went out, which I typically spend my weekends, a little more isolated. It's just how I usually prefer it, but I wanted to go out, and I was pretty sociable with people in general. I thought the effects would have subsided by day 4, but it just seemed like they continued to increase and benefit me. Day 5, there was not much to report. I just felt a little less inhibited, and the anxiety effects were a little less noticeable. I think this is where tolerance kind of set in, but not so much. And day 6 was just about the same as day 5. There was not much to report, and the effects of ashwagandha felt diminished quite a bit, but they were still noticeable enough. So day 7, the effects of ashwagandha aren't coming out quite as strongly as they were before, but it's still somewhat noticeable. I think it's one of those things you just grow accustomed to, and it kind of works in the background. It's not so much that it stops working or you grow too tolerant of it. It's just that you grow used to it, for lack of a better term. And I've noticed that my sleep has improved a lot, because I do have trouble sleeping big time and getting to sleep. Typically I'll lay in bed for 30-40 minutes at a time with my eyes closing. Nothing happens. But with this, after about 10 minutes, I'm out and I'm asleep, which is pretty awesome, because normally I have a lot of trouble getting to bed, staying in bed. So as far as negatives, the only real thing I can think of is the taste, which I don't think is that bad, but I also don't really think bromyracetam or pyracetam are that bad tasting, so my opinion probably doesn't count on this one. The only drawback I can think of right now of ashwagandha is that I'm feeling it may be making me a little too relaxed and too laid back in certain situations where I don't want to be relaxed or laid back. For example, getting something done by a due date, or let's say when I'm boxing and I'm a little too lax about the guy punching me in the face. That's not something where you just want to be overly calm. So basically I'm just saying stress in certain situations isn't necessarily a bad thing. And also I'm starting to think that it's making me a little sleepy during the middle of the day, so I may be switching up my dosing regimen. We'll see.